All right, it's 8 o'clock. Let's now take a look at the top stories this hour. Well, it's day 2 of the voter registration weekend, and voting registration centres have just opened and will close at 5 this afternoon. And for the latest from Kwazulu-Natal, we now cross to Nipho Magwaza at the Westville Civic Centre in Durban. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Just take us through what's happening where you are.
Good morning. So far it's still quiet. People are still probably asleep or still thinking of coming over to register here at the voting station at Westville. But yesterday when we went around Umlazi and various areas here in eThekwini municipality, we found that there were some issues, especially at Dalton, where the voter registration, they wouldn't allow the IEC in because of what happened previously, where voters, when they were demonstrating, they destroyed the infrastructure in eThekwini College. They had to put up tents outside, and then there were people who probably were hit by demarcation when they got to their usual voter registration place. They found that they no longer registered there. They have to vote somewhere else, so they had a bit of an issue. But with me now is the PEO, or Provincial Electoral Officer, Mrs. Ntomfuthi Masinga, who will tell us more about exactly what transpired yesterday and how the voter turnout and any problems that they were having yesterday in various voting stations. Good morning, Mrs. Masinga. Thank you so much for waking up and coming here today. Yesterday we received complaints from various people, others are not finding their names where they usually registered, and others saying that the voting station like at Dalton, it was closed, they wouldn't allow them in. Were there any other issues that the IEC officials or voter registration places experienced yesterday?
We had a very good day in the province yesterday. All our voting stations open on time except for just under 20 in different pockets of the province where we had service delivery protest, where they tried to stop voting stations staff from accessing voting stations. But overall we did pretty well. We had over 187,000 people showing up at our voting stations, either to re-register or to register for the very first time, and which is what we're targeting, the young people that we needed to see coming to our voting stations. Of the overall number of people that showed up, at least 18% of them were people that had never been on the voters roll before. We will continue today, and we still hope that with the hype that has been created around the registration weekend, we'll see young people coming out in numbers. In situations where there were protests, I think we had worked very well with the SABC in this province, in that in most situations they were able to diffuse the situation, and even though we ended up opening late in some voting stations, but when we talk about less than 5 voting stations that opened after 10, between 10 and 12, for an example, eThekwini was affected, Inkosi Langalibalele Durban municipality was affected, as well as KwaDukuza and Kokstad municipalities. So if you look at the 4,973 voting stations that we had, and only 5 of them opening between 10 and 12, we consider that a huge success in the province.
Speaking about voter turnout yesterday, or people turning out to go and register, did you find that there are more people registering online compared to those who are walking in to voter registration sites?
We haven't analyzed the online applications. The figures that I'm talking about are the figures of people that were processed through the VMD, the voter management device, after we process all the information on the VMDs. By the end of today, we'll be able to do a comparison between people that went to voting stations and people that actually went to our online platform.
And those complaining about not finding their names where they usually voted, what was the problem with them?
That's going to happen because in between this huge registration event, we continuously quality assure our voters roll. If you had registered in a voting station and we pick up that your address fall outside of the voting district where you are registered, we continuously correct that on the voters roll, because some people do not go to our online platform and check whether they have a complete address, whether we had a contact number, and if we found that unless the address was incomplete, and when we fill in the missing bits in that address, it then places you in a voting district next door. That's part of what we need to do. Yesterday, there are people who showed up at voting stations, and when we collected addresses for those that we didn't have a complete address for, once we completed that address, it then places them elsewhere. But in most cases, you'll find that it's people who live along the boundaries of voting districts, and it's very easy to make a mistake and conclude that you belong to a particular voting district. So we had a lot of those cases yesterday, and we are quite happy that we had those, because now people know that with the gadgets that we have, when you arrive at the voting station, the moment we collect your address, it will geolocate your address to a specific land parcel on the ground, so that we know exactly where you stay, and then we can correctly locate you in your voting station.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was PEO Provincial Electoral Officer Mrs. Ndomfuthi Masinga, highlighting problems and issues that they faced yesterday. But they're saying that today they are expecting more people to come in and register at various voting registration sites here in the province.